Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I'm Milton Curry, Dean of the USC School of Architecture, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the USC Architectural Guild Honoree Spotlight, Part 1 of a two-part series recognizing the contribution of our industry's best. We had hoped to be holding the Architectural Guild dinner in person earlier this year in April. And in the absence of that, we're holding this virtual touch point to celebrate these individuals, to share their accomplishments, and learn from their achievements. In a double feature interview this evening, we'll hear first from the recipient of the inaugural Citizen Architect Award, Zena Howard, Principal and Managing Director of Perkins and Will in North Carolina. Zena will be interviewed by Gabrielle Bullock, a current Guild Board member and Principal and Director of Global Diversity at Perkins and Will, Los Angeles. In creating this new category, this new award category, we sought to highlight and celebrate the contributions of architects and designers and design leaders who, in their multidimensional capacities, embrace the complexities of social, environmental, and political concerns. And the citizen architect is a community convener and collaborator, helping to solve design challenges for the public good and working to make our built environment a better place for all. And I couldn't be more pleased to offer this award, to bestow this award on this year's recipient, Zena Howard. She's an exceptional human being, exceptional architect and designer, and we couldn't be more pleased to honor her this evening. And I couldn't be more pleased to have the best interviewer and partner to interview her in Gabrielle Bullock, right here from LA at Perkins and Will. So please welcome Gabrielle Bullock and Citizen Architect Award honoree, Zena Howard.
Thank you, Dean Curry. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everybody. So a little bit about my friend Zena before I jump into a little conversation with her. So Zena's avid interest in shared cultural roots has shaped a body of design work that exemplifies her belief that the built environment can be a framework through which to share essential stories, strengthening the well-being and advancement of communities. Her career has been defined by visionary, complex, and culturally significant projects, such as the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of African-American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., that navigated social issues of equity and justice, restoring lost cultural connections by honoring history and memory. How you doing, Zena?
Gabrielle, well, it's evening here. Good afternoon to you and everyone else. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Great. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. We're going to have a little conversation.
Sure.
So Zena, really, congratulations for being named the USC School of Architecture's inaugural Citizen Architect, its first recipient. So you can add this honor to your list of first, which I'm sure there are many. And you're in good company, good USC company. For instance, Paul Revere Williams was a USC graduate, first African-American AIA member, first AIA African-American fellow, and an AIA gold medalist. So let's begin with what this new honor means to you. Can you share your thoughts on receiving this honor?
Yeah, first of all, it's great to be here. And, you know, it's indeed an honor, and it's humbling, Gabrielle, for me. You know, Dean Curry mentioned this inaugural award addressing issues of designers that address social, economic, and political, that, you know, sort of work at those intersections. And for so long, I know, particularly me as a diverse candidate or diverse practitioner in the field of architecture, you know, we've navigated those issues our entire career. And really so often looked as architecture as not a place or a space that could be used as a lever to address these types of issues. So I'm very proud of USC for you know, for instituting an award such as this. And you know, I've always thought about, and we talk about in studio, the community members as collaborators, in this space, and history as an informant. So, seeing that design can really be used to really elevate communities and use promote measures of economic stability is really important. So I'm thrilled to be the inaugural recipient of this award. That's incredible, and
I won't ask you what list of first this is for you, but so I understand we have something in common. You wanted to be an architect. You knew you wanted to be one in grade school. I was sort of like middle school. Could you have imagined at that time, and where your career has culminated and continued to go at this present moment, with your recognition as a national global leader in designing and in managing culturally significant projects and championing diversity and cultural heritage, and as one admirer quipped, the spiritual leader for the disenfranchised? Tell me why they would call you that.
Well, I said this before, that's certainly flattering and again humbling, because really what I do is a result of the people that I work with in the communities, and you know this, Gabrielle, because we work together in a lot of these communities, and really these the folks that these projects serve. They're smart, they're empowered. They're resilient, they're creative, they bring a spirit of creativity that fuels everything. So whereas it's an honor to receive this award, I always sort of deflect back to the people that inspire me and that we work with daily to do this. So it's it's a title that I embrace, but I really do see myself as more of a servant leader, maybe a spiritual leader, but hopefully a servant leader.
I like the spiritual leader. I've
Yeah,
seen you get our team more spiritually focused.
Yeah,
So you graduated from the University of Virginia's Architecture School.
Mhm.
Can you share with us more about your early career journey as a female African-American architect in a field that to this day is woefully lacks diversity? And who and what inspired you? What did you learn? This is like a 6-part question.
I remember.
And how did that shape your career? Take any one of those. And I just want to add our dear Phil Freelon. I know you worked with him for a very long time and you were very close. And so after you tell me, answer the first part of that question, I want you to share with me what you think he'd say today.
Yeah, that's probably the most important aspect of that question. So I'm going to save the best for last, as they would say. But getting back to my early career path, it wasn't direct. I mean, I when I got out of architecture school, it was similar to today. It was in a recession that was in the late 80s, early 90s. So that was one of the first recessions, probably not this bad because this is a triple whammy that we're going through now. But it was difficult, and just for economic reasons alone, there was not a whole lot of motivation and incentives to drive and push in this profession. It was easy just to say, it's tough enough. Why do this to yourself? For you don't see anybody. I didn't see a single person that looked remotely like me. Not only Black, I didn't see anyone African American, but certainly female. Nowhere to be found, and that was my early career for at least the first 10 to 12 years. And so I wish I could say it was a direct path. I knew what I wanted to be, and the road was clear. But coming out of architecture school, I really was focused on just doing what it takes to be an architect, the very practical steps of got to do this, you got to do your internship, you got to check the boxes, and you got to take the exam, those types of things. And so really the passion, I would say, came a little bit later. It came after I sort of sat back and reached all of those milestones, and then thought and said, I still am feeling a little vacant here. I'm still not feeling fulfilled. And, you know, oddly enough, I started, one of the things that really sparked my passion is that I started deep research working on a school that was envisioned for autistic children, and then went on to work on, you know, Performing Arts Center. But the critical thing is that I was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, working for a firm, and I wanted to take that firm into doing more cultural work that I had begun to do with those two earlier projects. So at the time, the city was actually looking for designers for the new August, which is now the August Wilson Center in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so I met 3 people. And this is the first time in my life that I really had sat down and had a conversation with 3 people that looked like me. And those 3 people, at the time, it was 2 initially. It was Allison Williams, who was—
I know her well.
Yeah. It was Kurt Moody. And then I didn't meet Phil Freelon in person, but I had a conversation on the phone, and I thought, wow, you know, finally people who have been in the shoes that I, you know, aspired to walk in. And from those introductions, I would say that was my first sort of mentorship, even though it was, you know, really talking about pursuing a teaming opportunity on a project together. It really was mentorship. And so I would say from that point on, you know, subsequent after that, I went to work for the Freelon Group and Phil Freelon. And as everybody kind of knows the story there, I became a partner there. And then we merged with Perkins and Will 6 years ago. But, you know, Phil, one of the things that struck me and made me actually say, yes, I'm going to work for the Freelon Group was my first meeting with Phil. He did say, you know, great design should be accessible to everyone. And that knowing how design is just so impactful in crafting who we are, you know, our sense of being. And that was really important. So I think if Phil were here today, he was always very, very optimistic. Anybody who knew Phil knows this. And just a huge, not just a mentor and a supporter, but beyond mentorship to advocacy, and which is where we all should be. You know, he's an advocate, always respected my decisions. And I think if he were here today, he would you know, say what he's always said and do what he's always done, which is support, advocate. And Phil, there was one thing that he always did. He never held back from just saying, I'm proud of you, you know. And that in a professional setting is really important as we look to mentor the other generation. So that's a little nugget on my career.
Sounds like Phil trained you to be the citizen architect from way back.
Yes, absolutely.
So can't have to ask this question or have you touch on it just a little bit. With what we're dealing with today, some people call it the triple pandemic. I call it the triple crisis. But given the pandemic, the economics, and the racial and social justice issues that we're facing in society today, what do you think about that as it relates to the work we do, the future? And you can, you know, talk about that now, or we can talk about it in relation to Destination Crenshaw, which is coming up. But I just want to get your initial thoughts on what does it mean to a citizen architect today?
Yeah, I think it's a powerful opportunity because, you know, we're at a moment where the awareness of the role of an architect as activist, which was never thought of before. Keep in mind, you know, we've had a history of being passive and in many ways complicit as a profession, as professionals, thinking, well, what can we do? We're just creatives, we're just designers, really, that's a sphere for somebody else. Or our own personal, you know, initiatives, but certainly not something that a profession can address, and we can certainly not address in our own work. So I think back to what Dean Curry said about addressing social and economic and political or environmental and political concerns, we now have an opportunity to do that more openly. It's almost like, coming out, right? And not feel bad about it, because we've always known the power of space and place and the impact on our, on our social constructs and well-being. We just never could talk about it because it seemed like it was kind of anti what we should be doing. So I think this is a moment to reimagine our purpose. I think this award is about broadening the definition of architect. I also think it's about broadening what we do. This is an opportunity for a bit of a renaissance, a little bit of a rebirth, if we want to get back spiritual again.
Told you.
Yeah, so challenging times like this present these opportunities. So I think we need to embrace the silver lining that's before us.
That's great. So speaking of power and place, the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture, in this behemoth milestone project with the embodiment of harmonious design, honoring race, equity, culture, and remembrance, so much has been written about this building and its design, its iconic nature, if not its sacred location on the mall, and the depth and breadth of its collection. Can you tell us more about this project and what it has meant for you professionally and personally? And the second part is, how do you think chronicling African-American history in cultural institutions will evolve moving forward, given where we are today?
Yeah, so for the first part, which was about what this project means to me, I mean, it's incredible. This project was a clear example of, if you knew what you knew beforehand, you probably would have been too afraid to think you can actually, do it. This project and everything about it was ambitious. It was ambitious. If you think about how African-American history has been told, mistold, presented, chronicled, it was sort of before the National Museum, it was sort of in fits and starts, right? You get a story here or a story there about maybe slavery, and over here, maybe civil rights, and over here, maybe the Civil War, but never taking the bold initiative to tell this incredible story in one experience and by an institution that has the credibility of the Smithsonian. So it was ambitious. And if you've ever heard Lonnie Bunch, the executive director, talk about it, and if you understood the practicalities of not having any collections or very little money and all of this stuff when we started, you would understand how this project was ambitious. And so to have the ability to work on this project that is of my identity, and even my family, like my parents and sisters and brothers and family, being able to see this in their lifetime, being able to see this in our lifetime, is extraordinarily an honor. And I would say, to your second part of your question, which is how should African-American history be chronicled moving forward?
How does it change given how museums are working today or reimagining themselves, and the fact that, anyway, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's, I would have to say moving forward, and as we are working on other initiatives, and you're going to talk about one of the big ones coming up or ask me about it, that you and I are working on, I think we are understanding that our history and our stories are a lot more complex, a lot more interconnected, interlaced, and that really, although we like heroes, and we always will have people that have heroic moments in their life that should be recognized and honored, we're kind of moving beyond, the single individual and really embracing collective narratives, because we know that that really, if you look at these stories, even heroic acts by a single individual, there were many people that came together that are behind the scenes that allowed that to happen. So really understanding more of the individual stories of everyday people that do extraordinary things. And so I think, and African Americans have come from a history of oral tradition and stories and collective, experiences. So I think if I were to guess, I don't have a crystal ball, but we are trending more towards that way in representing the African American history and experience.
So so do you think that USC and the Getty acquiring Paul Williams Archive is a significant move toward saving that legacy? How does it influence education, perhaps? Or you have any thoughts on that wonderful acquisition?
Yeah, first of all, yes. Hats off and congratulations. That is wonderful. That brings me back to Phil Freelon, because I remember how much work he put into, Paul Williams receiving the AIA Gold Medal posthumously.
I recall.
So, yeah. So, and thank God he was able to see that in his lifetime. But this is really significant, and it shows that again, back to this notion of how we choose to, or who we choose to venerate as heroes or memorials. And sometimes things come much later than they do, and people aren't recognized in their own time, but sometimes decades later. I think the fact that USC and the Getty have taken this very strong, powerful move opens all of our minds in a Jedi way, in a justice. It opens our minds to the possibilities. It makes people that were like me 20, 30 years ago, young and coming out, know that it's possible, right? That this person is recognized. So it's fantastic.
Okay, I just got 1.5 more for you. So
Okay.
Let's move this closer to home. So you and I and the Perkins and Will team have been working on Destination Crenshaw for a couple of years now. And for those who don't know, it's a 1.3-mile cultural and art experience along Crenshaw Boulevard between Lamert and about 60th Street. So the question, Xena, is, so a cultural renaissance, what's your hope that this project will bring to the community? What beyond, our stated goals and guiding principles, what's in your heart, gut feeling about what this project could do for this community, and what as an example for others?
Yeah, well, first of all, Gabrielle, I am honored that you and I are working on this together. Never talk about first, but never imagining that two African-American women can come together and work on a significant project like this. And to me, this project parallels on the West Coast what the National African-American Museum is doing on the East Coast, but in a fantastic way. We're at this moment right now, and we're all on panels and over Zoom talking about monuments, memorials, and symbols, and what they mean to people, and privatization or democratizing public space, and all of this discourse about public space and who owns it, who decides what it is, as we're in a moment now where, in certain areas, particularly in the East and Southeast, where the culture is deciding, right? People are ripping monuments down and repurposing, things for what they are. But Destination Crenshaw was ahead of its time, because you and I have been working on this project for 3.5 years or so, and thinking about, in a very deliberate way, and pulling together not just design, but collaborating with the forces of design and politics and economics and transit, with the metro coming together and addressing a significant issue, which is this is the largest African-American community that really remains for generations west of the Mississippi. And like all communities of African-American communities, there's a risk, there's a threat of displacement, cultural erasure. But the community inspired, deciding on their own to mark this space and place in a way that marks the dominant culture there in a permanent way. And the fact that it's a canvas, it's a community inspired canvas for art, for creativity, for expression. And so I just can't wait. I know it's a long project, like anything else, it's going to be worth it, when it's done.
Well, you'll be there to see it open, citizen architect.
Yes.
We have run out of time. Even though I have 12 more questions. No, I'm just teasing, but we do have to go.
Okay.
I want to thank you, my friend, Xena, citizen architect. I'm very proud of you and all of your accomplishments. And so thank you for the conversation.
Oh, thank you, Gabrielle. We could have talked all night, but
I know.
Dean Curry's not going to let us, right?
Thank you, Xena.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was great. Dynamic conversation, two very dynamic leaders and trailblazers in our profession and discipline. We're honored to honor you, Xena, and we're honored to have Gabrielle Bullock as a supporter and friend of the school, and such an asset to the discipline and to the architectural community in Los Angeles. So we look forward to continuing to bring you closer to us when you're on your trips to LA and to involving both of you in the activities of the school. And just, again, thank you for your leadership and continued support for the next generation of citizen architects. So great conversation. I know we'll want to continue that at some point. Okay, got a double feature. So we're excited to move on to the distinguished alumni honorees. This is the highest honor of our school, the longest standing award observed and bestowed by the USC School of Architecture, and is presented in recognition of exemplary achievement in architecture and related fields and excellent levels of service and leadership to the professional and academic community. Past distinguished alumni award recipients have included our own Kelly Sutherland McLeod, John Adams Jerde, and Frank Gehry, to name just a few. This year, I'm very excited, and we're very excited and pleased to have Maria and Juman Wong, who are in very good company. I believe they might be the first couple to receive this award, but they're both independently deserving and deserving as a unit, as founders and partners in their architectural firm, doing very distinguished work, and also very committed to the intellectual project of architecture and architectural pedagogy with their engagement and involvement with USC and other schools of architecture. So we're very happy to have them with us this evening, and it gives me also great pleasure to introduce our own Professor Kim Coleman, who will interview our distinguished alumni honorees, Maria Warner Wong and Juman. Kim.
Well, thank you, Dean Curry, and good morning, Maria and Juman. Congratulations for being named as the USC Architectural Guild Distinguished Alumni of 2020. This year's award is the first time honor both for alums practicing internationally and for a husband and wife partnership. So we're especially excited about this new aspect. You're both valued friends and former students, so I'm really excited to participate in this conversation. Your passion for design was evident in your work and your design leadership even during your USC undergraduate years in the mid-1980s. And now you're being recognized as national and global leaders with a sustainable design practice spanning architecture, interiors, landscape design, and urban master plans. Oh, I love these pictures. While the virtual awards ceremony won't be celebrated until December 8th, I'd like to ask you today, what does this honor mean to you?
Kim, can you hear me?
Yes. Could you hear me?
You've lost audio.
Uh-oh.
Can you hear us?
So you can't hear me? Okay, they are reconnecting. So in the meantime, it's wonderful to see these photographs. These are photographs actually of a program we taught together in the winter of 2016 in India, in Bangalore. Maria and Juman arranged for a client of theirs in Bangalore to sponsor a funded studio. And 24 students and 2 faculty were able to go to India for 14 days, and we designed a master plan project that was very, very interactive for Bangalore, of a part of a new city. So this is not Bangalore. This is a project of theirs in the Maldives.
Kim, we're trying to get them back on. So can you continue the narration of the slides? It was
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm better at the beginning than at the end. And this looks like some photos of their house in Singapore, which is quite remarkable. Can you hear us now, Maria?
Yes, I can hear you now. I'm on my phone now. Can you see us?
Yes, we can see you. And fortunately, the slides have been entertaining everybody.
Okay.
So you didn't hear, well, what I was asking as an initial question is what is this honor of the Architectural Guild Distinguished Alumni mean to you?
Well, for me, first of all, it's a tremendous honor, totally unexpected. And I think for me, as recent events have shown, we're all connected in a very intricate way, and recognizing us internationally, I think is very important because as part of a global community of architects, I think it's very meaningful for us, as Zena was mentioning earlier, to work towards a goal, objectives where we can make meaningful change. And so the award is a recognition of the USC world going far beyond the borders of the United States, and that's a very good thing.
Okay, I just wanted to add a bit to that. We graduated 30 odd years ago, and we began our journey in our career. And it's only now that we realize that the impact, that the relationships and the learning and the things that we did at USC have really impacted where we've gone in our life. And as we look back, we feel very honored to have this opportunity to come back to USC with a very different mission. Now it's having had a career for 30 years, we want to influence and we want to impact how education and architecture really changes the direction of the future. And I think it's needed now more than ever for all of us who have been experienced to really regroup and see how we can contribute and help. So we feel incredibly honored, and we want to thank the Guild and Dean Curry and USC for this honor, for really engaging us and inviting us to rethink how we can participate and how we can support the education of architects in the future.
Thank you. Thank you. As graduates of the USC Architecture and then Harvard GSD, perhaps you could share with us more your early career journeys. As the first international recipients of this honor, tell us about the places that have influenced you and how these experiences have impacted your career. who and what inspired you? What did you learn? And how did your experiences shape your career to date?
Okay, well, Juman and I grew up in opposite ends of the earth. I grew up in Mexico and Juman grew up in Singapore, but we both had a very multicultural upbringing. We had a lot of international experience in our early education. And I think that the opportunity to have a multicultural perspective in our worldview is one of the most significant things that's impacted how our career has actually developed, because to us, the opportunities were broad and we didn't see ourselves limited by a country or a region in terms of where we were going to practice. My education was very long and complex in many universities, and I availed myself of lots of different opportunities to be exposed. But what I would say influenced me most after the academic aspect of it, because academically, it was the other courses that I took, like international relations or anthropology, East Asian studies or religions, that really formed my way of looking at architecture that ultimately led to my values as an architect. But in school, we had an amazing mentor. Our first mentor was you, Kim, my first instructor and really inspiring person who really was dedicated and committed to helping students learn the skills and broaden their minds and learn a different perspective. And it was completely transformative for my career. And I really appreciated it. And from there, we worked very closely. We had Panos Koulermos, who influenced us a lot, and we worked with him as well after we graduated, and Stefanos Polizoides, who was my thesis instructor. So lots of academic influence. But architecture, it wasn't the time that we were in for me that impacted my view of architecture. I was equally inspired by Ando and Borromini or Schindler and Lou Kahn. It was architects across many centuries. And again, Kim, you were our instructor at USC in Rome, and brought us to open our eyes and see that other side of the world and the whole European history part of it. So we're so thankful. It really did it for our career.
Well, I want to say about in the mid to late 80s, which is when we were in school, was a very strong, I would say almost Eurocentric, Western-centric type of mentality in what is architecture, And so when we graduated, after we got married, one of the things that we wanted to do was to explore the rest of the world. And that's what brought us back to Asia. I don't think it was a deliberate thing to say, oh, we're going to come back and live in Singapore. I mean, in fact, we moved to Japan. And, it was the height of the bubble then. And it really opened our eyes to what the rest of the world actually, after our formal education, was doing and what the possibilities were. And because I had joined the Japanese firm, which was a global practice, I had at a very early part of my career, huge international opportunities of doing work in Southeast Asia, in India, in China. And that afforded us an opportunity to see how other cultures, other economies operated. And when Maria and I started WOW, immediately our platform was already international. Singapore is a small place, and Singapore is a stepping stone to the region, right? And so in our practice, that's the way it went. Immediately, we had projects in other parts of Asia besides Singapore, and that was very inspiring.
WOW Architects is an award-winning firm, and in addition to its base in Singapore, you have an office, maybe still in London. Not sure. Maybe you could talk about that. But the thing that you're recognized for is projects with core competencies in hospitality, residential, and commercial design, and that span from Asia to the Middle East to North Africa. Perhaps you could talk about your focus on creating sensory experiences. You talk about them being rooted in culture, memory, and place. So perhaps you could share a little bit more about this ethos. What does this aspect of your work mean to you, and how are you positioning your work in the field globally?
Okay, so I think that to talk to you a little bit about sensory experience and culture, memory, and place, which really are at the core of what we do, because we really try to create spaces wherever we are with these universal objectives, which is to engage people sensorially at as many levels as we can, very deliberately, and to engage people so that we create memory. So I'll go into a little bit about why we talk about culture, memory, and place. When we talk about culture in our work, we're talking about what is cultivated. We're trying to cultivate values. We're trying to make the person experiencing the space very aware of what is growing around them and the cultural influences and the values that they imbue into the place. And landscape has a lot to do with that aspect of cultivation. As far as memory goes, it's not about nostalgia. Really, it's about trying to create memories, trying to inspire people to be aware by connecting with nature, by engaging the senses to create memories and feel a connection between this place and this time, which actually is very unique for each individual person experiencing it. And of course, that deliberate effort to design spaces through landscape design, interior design, and architecture simultaneously is how we can create the total sensory experience. So we always try, as much as possible, to do projects where we actually design end-to-end furniture design, all aspects of the project. Yeah, how do we do that?
And I think that, this, especially in hospitality design, I think this is an approach that is appropriate, and it's a way of making culture and remembering our roots and the cultures of the various economies in which we work. The integration of various disciplines can really draw out a lot of the connections between areas that, if you were to look at architecture as an isolated discipline, it would not capture. And I think that aspect of our work is probably the most satisfying, I would say, and meaningful, especially in the rapidly developing economies where we do work, where sometimes it's all too easy to just copy and reproduce or to borrow from readily available sources. So I think this kind of approach is very good for developing design opportunities.
I want to add that, in the stage when we were at Harvard, we took a studio in land design, and that's a transformative experience.
I'm sorry, the studio where? I couldn't, we lost you for a minute. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Are we there?
You're back again, yes.
You got us? Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I was just adding to that it was our early formative education in landscape design that really was the thing that shifted our direction as architects and our passion for the environment. Very early on in the 90s, we started to learn more about the significance and the impact of architecture on the environment. And I wish we'd had more of that education when we were in school, and that's what we really hope to bring to the curriculum of architects, is more knowledge about science of the environment and understanding about the impact of architecture on the environment. But that is why I think the sensory integration and connection to the landscape and connection to the sense of place, because we're not exporting value and through their own individual culture, traditions, and the customs of the people who live there. And that sense, the cultivation and the landscape play a huge role in creating a sense of connection to place.
Well, that leads right into my final question.
Hello?
You're talking about architecture and the environment is, what is your hope for the future in design, and what are you most excited about?
Can you hear me, Kim?
Yes,
Can you hear us?
a little bit. You got a big,
I'm not sure who we're losing now.
a little big finger in. Oh, there.
A lag? There's a
Okay.
lag.
Yeah.
Okay.
what excites me of the future, I think, is the opportunity to collaborate and to integrate various disciplines. And I think recent events again have shown how we can no longer afford to look at architecture as an object-based or space-based discipline. And it's more about the total environment. It's about integrating how we live, and more importantly, recognizing that we don't live on this planet only as human beings. There are creatures, animals, plants that have to live together with us. And so when we design for the environment, in many of our projects now, we design entire environments, we engineer environments. It is important to recognize that architects should work in teams, lead teams. And I think it's back to Zena's point, we need to be activists for the causes that we are passionate about, that our planet really needs. And I think that the role of the architect as a leader is extremely important, and we need to regain that ground in terms of how we practice, how we influence the people and the cultures around us.
So just to reinforce it, I mean, really, it's that goal that architects will become leaders and that we will lead the way in terms of the environment that we're creating for others, with a really enlightened sense of how to be stewards of our world, and that our architecture will become regenerative rather than destructive as it is now, and that we can really rethink the idea of tourism and, you know, residential architecture to become something that is actually working in harmony with the environment rather than damaging it. So I think that is our hope, and we hope to participate. We hope to help in any way we can. And we're really honored to be tonight, to be featured together with Zena Howard. I have to say that the Citizen Architect Award is a really wonderful thing, and Zena is the best person to be the first recipient. So I just want to congratulate her and say how much we enjoyed hearing her speak and how happy we are that this has been bestowed on her. It's a wonderful thing.
Since we have a couple more minutes, I think maybe we could run through your slides again. And I think in particular, the environmental aspects of some of those images would be really great to describe, if we could do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think back to the point that we were making about environment and environmental issues, you know, people always ask me, what's your best project and what are you most, which project excites you the most? And I always say the next project. And the reason I say that is that with every succeeding commission, what Maria and I are very keen on doing is becoming more and more green and sustainable in the way that we practice the spaces and the places that we create and how we create it. The process is very important. And the stakeholders, the whole idea of having engagement with the stakeholders and educating and making the process and outcome purposeful. I mean, these are very powerful words that, I mean, you can see it in the world around us right now. Who we choose as our leaders, how we lead, these are immensely important decisions that we should participate in. And as architects, especially when you're doing large-scale projects, as leaders, as the lead consultant in the team, the example that you set, how you practice and how you influence your fellow consultants, these are huge issues. And I think the greenness in our project just demonstrates the trajectory that we're currently on.
So you can see, I think you can see that evolution in the images that we've chosen of a few projects, that the architecture of our projects is really transforming over time, and it's sort of becoming less prominent, it's becoming less visible, it's becoming having less of an impact, so that we can allow more space for the experience of our surroundings and our environment to the people who visit the projects. And that's definitely our wish. I mean, we want to go much further in that direction. We think that the opportunities are huge to transform the way that we build and the way that we live in communities. And I think the reason we see it from this perspective, in part, is influenced by the fact that we've lived in a garden city like Singapore for 30 years, a city where the people who really envisioned this city perceived it and envisioned it as a garden. And we've seen it. We experience it all around us all the time. It's ecologically balanced, integrated. Of course, we're fortunate to be in the tropics where you don't even need to irrigate. Rain is constant and the greenery is beautiful and abundant. But having lived in this kind of Garden of Eden environment, we now realize that wherever our projects are, whatever the landscape of that place, is something we want to connect to because it's so unique and so special.
Well, I like the
projects that you see.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Okay, the projects span a period of about 15, I'd say almost 20 years. What you see here, maybe 15 years, because the firm started 20 years ago this year. And we feel that it's kind of an important milestone for us. And of course, 2020 is helping us all rethink our future objectives collectively. And it's something that we all really need to take very seriously. We're not going to go back to the way we practiced before. Nothing is really going to go back. It's really going to move forward. And we're excited about that. We're always excited about the unknown opportunities that come from difficult times like this.
Yeah, and to the point of what you're seeing on screen right now, our projects as architectural designs are taking more and more of a backstage type attitude, where the landscape and the environment and the living things in it take the foreground, And I think that what we're promoting right now is the whole architecture as a substrate on which living things grow and live. And I think that is the exciting path and the way forward for all of humanity.
Yeah, we truly can attest to the students. We can attest to how living close to nature really makes us feel more connected and have a more healing and balanced sense of life. Because amidst the stress of urban life and the stress of the whole world and what humanity is doing, we have nature around us to remind us that we are one and the same. We're part of it. And that's actually where we're going to find our balance.
So 2020 is a new ground plane, potentially, allowing for...
Pardon me?
A new ground plane. Allowing.
Can't hear you, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yes.
Well, hopefully you can hear.
Yep.
Thank you. I think we're done. Thank you so much
Yes.
for your time, and congratulations again, and best wishes for your continued success. Now I'd like to invite Gary Brennan, USC Architectural Guild President, on for closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. Hope you all really enjoyed our first spotlight. Thank you to our honorees, Zena Howard, Maria, and Wong, plus our interviewers did a great job, Gabrielle Bullock and Kim Coleman. I think your collective works, your education and career journeys, and your passion really inspire us all. Also, thank you, Dean Curry, for your continued support and partnership with the Guild. As Kim mentioned, I'm Gary Brennan. I'm president of the USC Architectural Guild, and I'm also co-president of Siska-Hennessy Group. In the Architectural Guild's 61-year history, these challenging times have really provided our board and membership a profound opportunity to kind of reimagine and refocus on how we continue our primary mission of enriching the student experience at the USC Architectural School. Having raised more than $6 million since the Guild's inception in 1958, there is great strength in our combined influence. Guild membership and sponsorship represents nearly 100 local, national, and global firms of all shapes and sizes. I want to welcome you to join us again on Tuesday, November 17th for part 2 of the Honoree Spotlight Series, where we'll hear from Wayne Rakovich, who is our Business Leadership Honoree of the Rakovich Company, and Lifetime Achievement Honoree Art Danilian of Danili and Associates. Together, we will culminate this celebration with the virtual events program on Tuesday, December 8th. It's the penultimate event where the industry comes together to salute its own. Please look for that invitation in your email this week. And finally, we cannot thank the sponsors of the 61st Annual Guild Awards program enough. Please join me in acknowledging the generosity of these terrific companies and individual practitioners who continue to support our program and our efforts in a time of ever greater needs, particularly for the students. So thank you again for joining us tonight for this first spotlight. I look forward to seeing you all on November 17th and December 8th. And I will say, stay well, stay connected, and fight on.